Let's draw a mighty meerkat. Today's letter M animal is a meerkat. Items you're going to be needing today is a piece of paper, just like we do every week, a pencil, and something for outlining. I'll be using my black colored pencil. I use this every single week. And the other item you're going to need is something for coloring. Now, I just used some colored pencils, but if you have crayons, those would also work as well. So pause the video, go gather those items, and then meet me back here for our drawing lesson. Okay, you paused the video, you're back now, let's begin. So we're going to take our piece of paper, and as you can see from my paper that I drew my meerkat on, I put it tall like a door. That direction is called vertical, so make sure your paper is tall like a door. And I'll be using my marker, you're going to be using your pencil. Make sure your eraser is handy too. We're going to find the center of our paper, just like we do every week. I usually make a plus sign with my fingers and then kind of eyeball it and find the center and make a little dot. Remember, if you have to, you can always go back and change that dot before we begin. Pause the video anytime I'm going too fast. Now, when I'm looking at my meerkat, the first thing I want to look at is the shape of his body. How can I break this up into shapes? So the first thing I notice is that his body is an oval and his head is a circle. So this is going to be pretty easy. So the first thing I'm going to do is find the center of my paper, and I'm going to be drawing a big, wide oval around that dot. Now, before we draw that oval, I want you to make sure you save some room for his short little legs at the end and some room for his neck and his head. Now, I'll show you on my drawing. So I've got a long body, short legs, and a nice big size head. I made his head a little bigger because I really want to draw some cute face on him. All right, so I'll start with my finger. I never start with my pencil first. I'm going to start with my finger, just practicing my oval, making sure I like the size of it. Then I move on to my pencil, and I still don't touch the paper. I'm just rotating my hand around until I'm happy with the shape. I'm going to lay down my oval. As you can see, my oval isn't perfect. I don't care. I don't want you to worry about it making it perfect. We're going to erase half of it later and change it. So once you have your oval down, then the next thing you're going to do is erase that dot. We don't need it anymore. And now we're going to move into working on his neck and his face. So I took this picture and I just folded it in half up here and made sure that I could see that a little closer. I noticed he's got a pretty fat neck, so I'm going to go right up here and add 2 lines, one on each side for his neck. Remember to draw lightly. The lighter that you draw, the easier it's going to be for us to erase as we're moving on. Now we're going to be making a circle. So I want you to notice that when we make the circle, we're going to be making the circle this direction. So it's a little bit wider than it is tall. Not necessarily a squished oval, it's still a circle, but I just want to kind of move my fingers this direction as I'm drawing it. Now I want you to make this head large so that we really have room to draw those eyes later. And once you have that circle in there, then the next thing we're going to do is add some ears. So look at his ears. His ears are just a half circle on each side. So the meerkat is actually a part of the mongoose family. So he looks very similar to a mongoose, but a little bit different. He has a little bit of different coloring, and his tail is different. His tail is skinny. Now, once we put those ears in there, we're going to change the shape of his head a little bit later. I just want to get the ears placed in there, and then I'm going to start working on the rest of his body. So we've got his ears, we've got his neck, and now what I'm going to have you do is very lightly draw a super light line right down the middle of your picture. Please make sure you're drawing this light. We're going to be erasing it, but it's going to really help us when we're drawing the rest of his arms and legs to kind of center everything. Now, once I've drawn that line, that's going to help now when I'm doing all the proportions of the rest of his body. So the first thing I'm going to do is right below this, I'm going to bring that line down a little bit lower, and then I'm going to start by drawing right here, the space in between his legs. I'm going to go right here and make a little line. And if you notice, his legs are kind of separated out right now, so I'm going to make a little bend that goes this direction and a little bend that goes this direction. Now, I want you to make sure that you're not making this really low. We want to save some room for his feet at the bottom. This is just going to be his leg. And as you can tell in my drawing, I made short legs. All right, we're going to come up here to the side of his body. We're going to give him a little hip. It's going to be fat up here where the muscle of his leg is. Meerkats have very strong legs. And we're going to draw another hip on the other side. Now these hips and his leg muscles are so strong because if you can see, he is standing all the way up on his tippy toes like a ballerina. So the meerkat, when they are in a group, they're called a mob or a gang. Isn't that funny? Just like we would be a mob of people, it's a mob of meerkats. Now, there are certain meerkats that are the lookouts. They're called the sentries. And the sentries, they look out to make sure there are no predators that are going to come and hurt the rest of his group, his community, his mob. All right, so once we've drawn these big, fat, wide hips, we're going to draw a short little curve here for the heel of his foot. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, short little line for the heel of his foot. And then for now, I'm just going to have you draw two lines that come down like this for his foot, kind of coming out this direction, parallel to one another. Parallel just means that they're going the same direction and they don't meet at the bottom. Now we'll add some toes later, but for right now, I just want you to round the bottom of his foot like this. Okay, now as you're looking at them, you want to measure to make sure that your legs are the same distance apart, meaning one leg is 3 fingers wide, the other leg should be 3 fingers wide or 2 fingers wide or whatever you've drawn. You also want to check your feet. I can already tell one of my feet is longer than the other. So I'm going to measure using my fingers. That's what I always use. And I want you to measure your drawing using your fingers. You don't have to ever use a ruler. I use my fingers for everything. Okay, now once you've done that, and by the way, pause the video anytime you have to fix something. We're going to go up here and we're going to draw his arms. So look at how his arms kind of sit up like this. So when he's standing up on his tippy toes, he actually can't stand without his tail. This is a very important part of his body, is his long tail. We're going to add that once we get his arms in there. But for now, let's get his little arms because he has them kind of perched up like this. So we're going to go over here where his shoulder would be and just draw a small bump on both sides. We're using that middle line to help us make sure that our placement is the same on both sides. And then we're going to bring his arms out a little bit because they're coming out where that elbow would be. And then we're going to put a little bend in his elbow. A little bend. We want those to kind of line up on both sides. So let's start with the one arm. So I'm going to bring this arm toward the center line. And then I'm going to add a top of his arm on this side. So I'm going to erase this part of his oval because I don't need that in there anymore, so you can kind of see a little better. See how I drew that little arm? And then I'm going to draw it coming up here. You notice this part of his arm is a little shorter than this part. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to draw his long elbow, 2 lines coming down. I'm going to erase all this side here. We don't need that anymore. And then I'm going to draw a bend in his elbow and bring it in a little bit. Now this center line is going to help us in actually drawing his hand. So I don't know whether you can see this or not, but they have very long, sharp claws. For today, we're just going to work on drawing his hand. So I'm just going to draw a little curved line that comes right to where that middle line is. And then I'm going to bring it down kind of far. And I'm going to come right here to the back where his wrist would be. And I'm going to add a little bump. That would be the palm of his hand right here, the palm. And then I'm just going to bring another line down. I'm going to round it at the bottom, just like how we did the foot. So it's going to kind of look like he has mittens on. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to bring this line in towards the middle and down. And this line in. Make a little bump to the palm of his hand, and then down and around, making sure his hands are about the same size. I can see I made that one too long. We'll add his fingers later. We're just kind of blocking everything in right now. Okay, so now once you've done that, we can erase the center line with your eraser. We don't need that anymore in his body. We can erase this oval here. We don't need this in there anymore. We're going to use that part of the oval to help draw the side of his body. So right here, we're going to make him a little fuzzy. I'm just going to add a little bit of fur on the side of his body where his tummy is. See right here. And then his chest area here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to retrace a little curved line right here for his tummy. I'm just going to go right in here and draw a little oval. I'm going to bring it right around back to the other side. And then once I have that oval in there, we can make it furry later. We're just kind of drawing everything in right now. And then that stomach or that furry line is going to come up right here. And it's going to stop before we get into this area. Now right up here, erase the top of the oval. We don't need that anymore. Now we can kind of curve his neck a little bit more so it doesn't look so stiff. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a curve now to match his shoulders. Okay, let's move on to his head. First thing you're going to notice is the top of his head isn't perfectly round. It kind of has two little bumps on the top. So right here, I'm going to add a gentle bump. And I'm going to add a gentle bump on this side. Kind of like you're drawing two little small, short mountains on each side. Then you're going to erase the top of the oval. We don't need that anymore. All right. Now let's work on his face. So we don't need that center line in there anymore. Let's erase that. Let's draw a big oval right here in the middle for his muzzle. And I want it to go all the way down till it touches the lower part of his face right here. So that little shape right there is going to help us in the placement of his nose. So right in the center of that oval, I want you to make a big round oval on its side, like a jelly bean. Then you can add a little nostril, kind of like a little small oval on both sides. And then we're going to give him a narrow bridge. So we're just going to draw two lines close together here that kind of curve in like this and out. So this is going to give us the illusion of his nose being long and pointed. All right, and then we're going to take the top of this oval right here, and we're going to erase it and then just add a couple little lines like this. Oh, he's turning out so cute already. All right, time to give him big eyes. Now, I know you're looking up here and his eyes look really dark, but I think he would look so much cuter if we gave him some bigger eyes. Look at how big I made his eyes. So the way that we can do that is by following this curve up, around, and back. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Up, big, around, and back. Now don't worry if your two eyes aren't the right size, one's bigger than the other. You can always pause the video and correct your work as we go. Once you have that big shape eye, so it's just kind of like a big circle, we're going to change it up just a tiny bit. We're going to make it look a little cuter by just curving a little cheek right here. So notice I kind of gave it a little lift. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm just going to give him a little curve. Now the minute you put that curve right here, what that does is it makes your lower eyelids lift up, your cheeks lift up, and it gives you the illusion of smiling. See, watch what happens when I smile. When I smile, this lower eyelid lifts right up like that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a big eye right here, a big eyeball. So I'm going to take my marker and go right here, curving up, around, and back. I want you to do the same thing on this side, up, around, and back. Now, it's very important at this point that you make sure that both of your eyeballs are the same size. So At this point, if you need to erase, go ahead and erase and try it again. Up and around and back. That is going to be his iris. His iris is the colored part of his eye, and his pupil. Now, once we have that big circle there, we're going to add one more underneath. So now, underneath that part, we're going to add another one. So inside this, we're going to add another big circle on both sides. And that one's going to be his pupil. So we're going to take our pencil and we're going to color very lightly that pupil in, but leave a little tiny light up at the top. You notice that when you're looking at my eyes, there's a little white light right up here. That is our highlight. So I'm going to color right here and leave a little bit of a highlight with my marker. You're using your pencil. Later, we'll do it darker when we get to our black outlining tool. Okay, so now the second circle that we originally drew, that's going to be his iris. That's going to be the colored part of his eye. Where's my color drawing? So if you can see in my drawing, I gave him some golden brown eyes. I did the pupils black, the iris, the colored part, kind of a golden brown. Okay, let's talk about the meerkat's eyes. He also has a patch of black fur around his eye. This part is really important. So have you ever watched a football game and you've seen football players and they paint that black right here underneath their eye? What it does is it helps to deflect the bright sunlight and the glare from the sun. Well, this is amazing. A meerkat actually has a layer of dark fur around his eyes. So I want you to take your pencil and make a little patch of dark fur around his eyes. And you can even extend it down very lightly onto his cheeks like this. So what that is that is going to deflect the hot sun, because he lives in the savanna desert of Africa, and it gets really, really hot there. He is so amazing. What he can do is he can actually stare up into the sky, right into that hot blazing sun, but because of this fur around his eyes, it protects his eyes so he's able to even see. What is he looking for? He's looking for a predator that might want to eat him, because there are vultures that will attack meerkats, and there are other animals that fly that will come by and hunt him. So now let's move down to this area right here where his chest is. We're going to add a little bit of fur on his chest right here. Start fuzzying him up. Oh, I forgot his mouth. Oh my goodness. How can he smile without a mouth, right? My goodness. He looks so cute just the way he is, but we got to give him a mouth. Okay, so draw a really short line right here underneath his nose, right in the middle. Mine's not quite in the middle, but that's okay. And then we're going to give him a fuzzy lip going this direction, very short and fuzzy, and then curve it right up to the edge of that little muzzle circle. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm giving him a little bit of a fuzz. And then right up there, I'm going to show you a close-up of my black and white drawing so you can see what I just did. See? All right, now this part right down here that began our muzzle circle, I want you to lightly erase it and erase this little line here too. You don't need that. Lightly erase it. Now, what I want you to do instead is I want you to make this fuzzy. So just go around it like this and make it a little bit more furry. That's better. We're going to just fuzzy them all up. Okay, now the side of his cheek right here, we're going to fuzzy this up. So lightly erase it and give him a little bit of fur on his cheek. Do the same thing on this side now. Just erase it and give him a little fur on his cheek. Up here at the top of his head, I want you to give him a few little hairs right up on the top of his head. Now don't cover up that little divot in the middle. That's important, that little bend in his skull where his head is kind of pointed on this side, pointed on that side. You want to make sure you get those little hairs around there. All right, and then furry up his ears just slightly and darken them with your pencil. Later, when we get to the black outlining tool, we will make that even heavier. But this is just to remind you to make it dark. All right, he's starting to come around. He's getting so cute. Okay, next, we're going to furry up the shoulder. and his arm. So just go right along your line and furry it up. Don't worry, we're going to get to the fingers. Furry up his other shoulder. And then furry the front of his arm right up here. This is his forearm. And then I just usually add a couple little curves of fur on his chest here. All right, so he's looking a little fuzzier now. I want you to go into his legs and make his legs a little bit furrier on the side. A little bit on the inside of his leg. And then this part right here, remember we drew that little stomach circle? I want you to fuzzy that line up. Just kind of tapping it with my pencil, not doing anything too hard. Give him a little fur on his chest. And I want you to add just a little bit of fur right here underneath his chin. And right up here on his eye, right up here above his eye, give him a little eyebrow up there, just a little fuzzy little line. Let me show you in my drawing. It's a little easier for you to see in my pencil drawing. See how I gave him a little fur there? I also want you to add a little curve of his cheek right there. That's what's going to kind of cute him up a little. So right here, I'm just going to extend this cheek around just a little bit. All right, let's move on to his fingers. Okay, let me talk to you about his fingers. So when a meerkat needs to hide or go to sleep, he digs a burrow, and he has these really long claws. He's about the size of a squirrel. So if you have any squirrels in your yard, that's how big a meerkat is. But the most amazing part of him is that he's got these super long claws for digging, and he digs a hole called a burrow, and he lives in that burrow with his family, with his mob. His family is called his mob or his gang. And so when they need to get away from predators, this is where they hide. So let's do his fingers now. So I'm going to kind of lightly erase this line so it's not so dark, and I'm going to make the outside, the pinky finger first. I'm just going to draw a long finger, and then I'm going to add a second finger next to it, so like a half of a finger, because the first one is kind of hidden behind the pinky. And then I'm going to add one more behind that. You see that? I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to lightly erase that little shape that looked like a mitten. I'm going to draw one finger first. That's going to be the outside finger. I'm going to draw another one behind it, and the third one behind that. I don't want you to worry too much about these fingers being perfect, because to be honest with you, we're going to color them dark later with our colored pencil. Now, down to the feet. So for the feet, we're going to do just a couple toes. So the way I do that is I'm going to start once again, just like I did before, starting on the outside edge right here. I'm going to draw a little curved line for his first toe. And then the next toe next to it is going to be a little bit longer. And then the next toe next to that is going to be a little shorter. That's the one in the background. I just kind of made a little half circle. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I erase my hard line first. It's a little easier to draw. I'm going to start with my first toe, my second toe, and my third toe. Now, if you're starting to stress out about the toes, or you're not liking the way they turned out, guess what? You could draw some grass to cover them up later. So don't think too much about it. Don't stress about it. But you could always just go like this and add some grass, because they live in the grasslands of Africa. You could just go like this and cover up the seat with grass. Nobody's going to notice. All right, let's see. What did I forget? There's one important thing that he needs in order for him to stand up like that, super tall and straight. He doesn't even move. He can hold that position for up to an hour. What does he need to hold his body so he doesn't tip over? I wonder if you can see it right here. Can you see that? He has a very long tail. This tail is actually as long as his body. So when he's standing up there, and he's called the sentry, he's the one that's checking it out, making sure that there is no predators coming. So he will stand up on his very tippy toes. Sometimes he just sits on his haunches and looks like this. Then he needs his tail, and this tail is what holds that position so he doesn't tip over. So right here in the back, I want you to decide, where do you have extra room on your paper? So for my paper was, my drawing was kind of a little bit close to the left, so I drew the tail coming off to the right. If you notice that your drawing is a little bit more to the right of your paper, why don't you make the tail going off to the left, okay? So the first thing we're going to draw is the part of the tail that would be showing from in between his legs. So I'm just going to go right under here and just draw a little half of a curve, okay? And I'm going to continue it through his leg. Now, if it's easier for you to draw right through the leg, go ahead. But I'm just going to kind of do an imaginary line of where that would go, and then I'm going to extend my tail. His tail is long, so don't be afraid to make a really long tail here. They have a long tail, and their tail isn't very fuzzy. It's wider at the base, right up here where it's going to be behind his body, and it gets more narrow at the end. And there's a little bit of hair at the end, so you're just going to want to kind of make it a little fuzzy at the end. See how I'm kind of adding a little bit of fur to the end? It's also darker on the tip than it is. Now my photograph, I think you can kind of see it's dark on the tip right there. Okay, I think we are all done with our drawing part. So now what you're going to be doing is pausing the video. Did I ever forget anything? I don't think I did. Yes. Nope, I didn't forget anything. We're going to add some stripes to his body once you come back. So what I'm going to have you do now is you're going to pause your video. You're going to get your outlining tool, and you're going to outline all the lines that you want to keep. But before you do that, if you've got any big areas you need to erase, go ahead and erase those with your eraser. And then you're going to go in and outline everything with your black colored pencil. Remember, this black colored pencil, it's super important for you to go in and really get a good dark outline and a good dark line here on his pupil. Color his nose with your black outline. Don't forget to put a little black outline on his ears. And then meet me back here when you have everything outlined, and then I'll show you a couple more tricks, okay? So pause the video, go outline your whole drawing, meet me back here. All right? Now, if you're still here, that means you turned off the video, you outlined, and you are ready for the next trick. So the next trick we're going to add is a little bit of striping on his body. So a meerkat fur is camouflaged just like the same color as the savanna desert. If you notice, they are basically the same color as their surroundings. However, they do have a striped pattern on their sides. We can't see them because they're facing forward in this photograph. But if you could see his side or his back, you would see them. So all we're going to do is add a little hint of striping with our black outlining pencil. Don't bother with your pencils. Go in with your black outlining pencil. And we're going to add just a quick little ziggity zag. Look at how I do this. I just kind of go zigzag. They get wider and they get skinnier as they go in. So I just kind of go ziggity zaggity ziggity zag. And just add a couple of these stripes on their legs. You're going to add a little bit on the side of his body. Now my marker draws it really dark, but if you notice on my pencil line, I did it really light. I'm not doing it very dark. You're also going to want to take your black colored pencil and add a little extra darkness to his ears if you didn't remember to do that. And use your black colored pencil to outline very softly, add a little bit of darkness to his face. All right, you might have noticed I didn't have you draw the whiskers yet. Now the whiskers are going to be added now with our black colored pencil. So when you draw your whiskers, we're going to draw it very quickly with a quick stroke like this. We're going to go flick, flick, flick. So when you take your pencil, you don't want to draw these slowly. You want to set your pencil down and flick them from the muzzle straight down. I usually do about 3. So I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3. If you mess up, don't stop. Don't try to fix it. Just leave it. No one's going to notice. I don't want you to think about that kind of stuff. All right, well, we're all done, and you've done all your black outlining. Our final part will be our coloring. So let me show you how I colored my meerkat, and I want you to decide how you want to color yours. So this is my black and white version. I told you before what I do is I take my drawing, I put another piece of paper over it, I put it up to a sunny window. You see this window right here? It's not very sunny anymore, but that's where I set my paper in front, and I retraced my entire drawing one more time. Once I retrace my drawing, now I have two copies of it. Then that's how I do it for this video. Then here's my second one. I just traced it from my first one. Now this little guy I colored with my colored pencils. Let me show you the colors I've used. I didn't take very many colors to do this meerkat. I chose out of my little box of Crayola colored pencils. This is peach. I chose a peach. I chose kind of a light tan color. And there were two browns, and I liked them both, so I couldn't decide which one I liked better, so I used both of them. And the only thing I did was I started with the lightest color, which was my peach, and I took the peach and I rubbed it all across his face, all across his neck, his shoulders, his foot, his fingers, down his tail. I rubbed everything with this. That was my base coat, except for inside the whites of his eyes. You can see the whites of his eyes don't have that color. Now, after I did that, I went to my next lightest shade of brown, and it's called tan, and I rubbed this now over everything that I did peach, over the entire picture. But then I went in and I did it a little heavier. You see how I did that? I did it a little heavier around the edges. Not super heavy, but just a little heavier. Let me show you that close up so you can really see. I did it a little heavier up here too. Can you see that? And a little heavier around his muzzle and around his little eyes. Now remember, we're going to make that darker brown after we're done with this color. Now the next color I went into were the two shades of brown. Whatever I did with one shade of brown, I just copied and did it with the second shade of brown. And this is where I did his eyes. Look at his irises. So his iris is the colored part of his eye. So right in here, I put a little bit of dark brown and a little bit of that tan up at the top. I left this area here brown. I did it all the way around his eyes, and I darkened his ears with this color, and I darkened his nose with this color, and his muzzle. The last part was his fingers. I noticed that in his picture here, his fingers were dark, so I darkened it with my colored pencil. It looked like from some of these pictures here that their toes looked a little darker. I might be wrong, but they looked a little darker to me, so I added a little darkness on his toes. However, maybe you didn't like your toes, and you're like, I don't like my toes. I covered them up with grass. Great, then you can just color that the color of straw. You don't want to color it like green grass because they really don't live where there's green grass. It's very dry. All right, now, don't leave yet. I got to tell you some cool facts about the meerkat. Number one, I already told you that they hang out as a gang. But this is such a cool thing because I told you that I called him the Mighty Meerkat. You're probably wondering, why is he a mighty? He's so little. He's the size of like a squirrel, and he looks kind of like a rat. He is mighty because guess what they can eat? Well, I have two things that I think make them mighty. Number one, when they're hanging out in their gang and they're hungry and they need to find food, they take their paws and they dig. But they live in the desert. And do you know what lives in the desert? It's an insect. It has a super sharp pointy tail that could stab you and sting you. Do you know what that is? Starts with an S. We might draw it for our letter S animal. It's called scorpion. Very scary, right? Not for this guy. He is actually able to catch the scorpion, bite the scorpion, and bite off the stinger, and then eat the scorpion. Now, let's say the scorpion stings him by accident. That would hurt us very badly if it happened to us or to our animals. But guess what? The meerkat, he has an immune system that's able to fight that toxin that's in the scorpion. And so that's why I think he is a mighty meerkat. The other reason I think he is a mighty meerkat is he does the coolest thing. Okay, so if they're all hanging out, the mob. Remember, they're called a mob or a gang. And they're all hanging out, and they hear in the grass. It might be a cobra. It might be an adder. That's another type of snake that is hunting them, that's trying to eat them. Guess what they do? I told you they're called a gang or a mob. They literally mob up, gang up around this snake that's slithering through the grass, and the snake will come up like this, getting ready to strike. You know how cobras get up like this to ready to strike? Well, guess what those meerkats do? They all start barking in unison. They all go, they sound like dogs when they bark, by the way. And they all start barking. And they make all the sound. And it distracts the cobra, and the cobra doesn't know who to strike. So if he tries to strike one, they will start yipping from the background. And pretty soon, the cobra gives up and decides, I can't catch food here. I'm going to take off and leave. And then the cobra will take off. These little mighty meerkats can do that. And I just think that's amazing. I just loved learning about the meerkats. And I hope you had fun not only learning about meerkats, but learning how to draw meerkats. So that was our letter M animal. I cannot wait to see you for the next letter N. What will we find for the letter N? I'll have to start thinking on it. I hope you had fun, and I will see you next time. Thanks for drawing with me. Art with Ms. Torres. See you next time. Bye.